Okay, this video is on 2.2 linear inequalities. It's page 26 of the workbook. So you can either print that out or just write on plain paper, but remember to turn in everything, even if I leave some blank. Those are for you to try on your own. I don't always do that, but sometimes I do. So first of all, let's look at the definition of what inequalities are. An inequality is a relation between two numbers or two sets of numbers or elements, sometimes we call them, in which are not strictly equal, but greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. And here are all the symbols, so read through those. Just make sure if you have an equal to that you have that equal symbol line underneath. Okay, and when we graph these on a number line, that means you're going to fill in a solid dot or have like a bracket. So I'll show you those. So it's a little different when you're doing that, but you should be kind of familiar with this. A linear inequality in one variable is an inequality of the form ax plus b less than c. And we actually can use all the same ways to solve as we do for regular equations, equalities, but there's one twist to it when we divide or multiply by a negative, so you might remember that. So we'll go through that and why that is when we get to it. So first we're going to look at how to graph them and do the interval notation, and this is probably something that's pretty brand new to you. So 2.2.1, graphing linear inequalities. So interval notation, we rewrite the greater than, less than or equal or greater than or equal symbols in parentheses and brackets. So when we write them this way with the parentheses or brackets, that's called interval notation. And what that means is we're including any inputs is usually what it is the along the x-axis. So we're not doing the XY axis yet. This is just as if it's a number line, so it's just like a x-axis only. So we're just looking at like the domains, what the inputs would be, and it could be anything in that interval of numbers. So it would be, if it were, for example, if I had something like, I'll just write up here, the interval from 2 to 5, that would be not including 2 because it's a curved parenthesis, and it would go all the way up to 5 but not including 5. So it has all the fractions, all the decimals, everything like that. Now the tricky part with this is it kind of looks like a point, doesn't it? But it's not. So you need to look at the context of the problem when you're working with these and how it all lays out. But it is kind of confusing at first. You might have done some graphing where you've plotted some points and then you're looking at this and say, why, that's the 0.25, but it's not. So in this context, it's an interval for an inequality. So, and this one would be a compound inequality where we're having between, which we'll get to next. For starters, you're going to see ones that have just with the infinity symbol. So that's sort of the concept, notes, and introduction. I'm going to try to keep these videos a lot shorter, so I'll go a little quicker, but again, you can slow it down, speed it up, whatever you want to do. So example 2.9 is graph the inequality and rewrite the inequality in interval notation. So the first thing we're going to do is draw some number lines down, and just like this with a straight line. You can use a straight edge if you want. It's hard. I don't have a virtual ruler in here, and plus those are kind of tricky to use anyway, to position accurately. So just draw as straight a line as you can, depending on what you're using. Paper, if you have anything to use as a straight edge, that's fine. And then you're just going to put in some tick marks here. 0, probably going to have -1, 1, just kind of evenly space them out. Okay, and make sure you hit on the one that we're looking at in particular. X is greater than or less than 3, so we want to make sure we have a 3 included there. So I'm going to set these up for A and B here. So you pause the video and you go ahead and do the same. Okay, so now I have my number lines all set up. You'll notice I changed it. I did find something to use as a straight edge. I'm just using actually the White Pass ski map. I'll fold it up, or you can use like the edge of a sticky pad. I tried that. So whatever works for you. I'm using those because they're soft and short. They fit on my tablet. So X is greater than or equal to 3. So we would want to mark that. I'll use some purple here with a solid dot or a bracket because it is included. So sometimes I like to just start with a solid dot just because then I have to look at the direction I'm going to go. And either one is fine. This book usually uses a bracket, and your software will probably have a bracket, but you might see both. So, and you probably have come in from, I think you came in from a course if you were in 92 using dots. So we have X is greater than equal. So I know everything bigger than 3 will be true for that statement. So I'm going to go ahead and extend that. Make sure you do put arrows on. Some people like to write it like a little bit above so it doesn't interfere with the number line itself. So you can do that. And I'm just going to make the bracket there also. So either one of those is fine. I'm going to get rid of that one line. If you have a solid dot too, you can just put it up above a little bit. So now for B, y is less than -1. So this one does not have the equal sign. So we would put an open circle, or we would put a curved bracket or parenthesis, usually we call them. And we're looking at anything that is below that going off into toward negative infinity. So I'm going to write it right like that. Or you could have an open circle. Okay, either one of those is okay. So you're probably kind of familiar with that, but now let's look at interval notation, which might be new to you. So I'm going to write that down below here. So once I graph it, it's easier to see how the interval notation works. I just make my bracket, and I put the 3, which is included, and I'm going off to the right forever and never, so that is positive infinity. And I always put a curved parenthesis for positive infinity because we never can bound that. We never would include it. Over here for part B, y is less than -1. The graph helps us set up our interval notation. So you might pause the video and try to do that one yourself. I am not going to include the -1. So I want a curved parentheses. You can see how I'm kind of working right to left here just because it is easier to work the graph that way. So I have negative infinity to -1, or it's really kind of the reverse, but we always want to write our numbers in order of lowest to highest, okay, left to right. Okay, now we're looking at example 2.10 or 2.10. Given the graph, write the equivalent inequality in interval notation. So what this says is that my variable x, or whatever letter it might be, is going to be greater than 2. It's not equal to because we have a curved parenthesis. Notice this little symbol is going in the same direction as my arrow. So x can be anything bigger than 2. For interval notation, we're going to write the 2 with a curved parenthesis and comma infinity and then curved parenthesis. So I could write the answer in either of those formats, but it might depend on what you're told to do in an instruction on the electronic homework or maybe a quiz or a test. So pay attention to that. If you're marked wrong and then it's telling you a certain direction, that's why, instructions. So this one here, again, we want to have our symbol will point in the same direction as the arrow. and we'll call this one y, is less than or equal to, in this case, -6. Because this one I can see here is a straight bracket. And how I would write that in interval notation, I would have my -6 with a bracket down to -infinity with a parenthesis. So that's all there is to it with interval notation. I think you just need to get used to it, and then you'll be fine. So doing a lot of practice in the electronic homework and stuff and writing them out on paper really will help you. So even if it's just set up that you're gonna choose something on a like A, B, C, or D, you should get in the habit of writing it out. That will help you remember it. Right, so that's it for part 1, the intro of intervals, and I'm going to get into solving linear inequalities in the next video.